Can you mention any countries that have best practices of human rights protection?
Like for instance, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Myanmar. Indonesia has performed the work on how to prevent torture in different institutions, and these kind of experiences can be learned by others.
Southeast Asia has faced numerous human rights violations and abuses, ranging from the worst crimes against the Rohingya and other religious and ethnic minorities in Myanmar to extrajudicial killings in the Philippines during President Duterte's period. Many enforced disappearances have also occurred across the region, along with violence against human rights defenders, attack on freedom of religion and belief, freedom of expression, and some other incidents. It does not mean the region has no institution that addresses the human rights issues. Since 2009, member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations heads the Asian Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, or AICHR. But critics said this body has been ineffective and incapable of protecting human rights in the region. I'm Purwani Dia Prabandari, and you are watching Temple Talks. Now we have with us Ibu Yuyun Wahyuningrum. She is the representative of Indonesia in the Asian Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, who will explain about human rights problems in the region and how her organization addresses the issue. Ibu Yuyun, it's an honor to have you here at Simple Talks.
Thank you, Mbak.
You're in Cambodia right now, so are you attending a program on human rights?
Yes, I'm now in Siem Reap. We have the ICHR meeting tomorrow and the day after. And then after that, on the 18th of November, we are going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. And on the 19th, we are going to have the ASEAN Human Rights Dialogue. So I'm here for 3 back-to-back meetings of ICHR.
You know, I'm sure that you talk a lot about human rights. When we talk about human rights, what comes to your mind actually?
Well, this region is not necessarily immune from human rights violation, as you mentioned earlier. We have refugees issues, we have migrant workers violation, enforced disappearances, the violation against religious minorities, so many issues happening in the region. But I saw number of member states were trying their efforts to find some solution to address some of the issues. Some of the responses are not necessarily seen as enough as many other situation in part of the world. But ICHR is here to bring together some of the member states to discuss and recognize the problem. So recognition of the problem is the key of dialoguing on the issues, and then to find ways how to solve the problem. And
Wait a
in
minute,
many
does each state recognize the problem of it?
some member state did not recognize the problem, some recognize the problem. So we cannot generalize member states the region on how they recognize their state obligation on addressing the issues, and we cannot also generalize states recognizing the problem.
Can you tell us which countries they recognize about those situations and countries that they don't recognize there is a problem of human rights in their country?
Each country has its own sensitivity. Some countries, like for instance, majority of the countries in Southeast Asia are not state party to the Convention on Refugee Protection, for instance.
I
Uh,
see.
in many ways, they know the problem is here, the problem is linger, but not necessarily they would like to recognize the problem. So, for instance, Thailand call refugees as someone who flee from their countries,
Ah,
and the other use other issues, but actually these different terms addressing the same issues. But when the refugees already in the country, in their country, they have to do something. So Malaysia provided informal education for refugees. Indonesia did similar thing. Indonesia also provide some centers, and now more and more governments try to ensure that children of refugees can
mhm,
have access to education. Similarly, with other countries. In the region, only two countries ratified the convention, which is only Philippines and Cambodia, Convention on Refugee Protection.
mhm. And the ASEAN it's already considered that they don't do well addressing the human rights abuses and violation in the regions, right? It seems that the government of member states remain silent upon seeing those violations, or even worse. And they are the ones that commit the violation themselves in their home countries, right? So, how do you think? What do you think about how ASEAN addressing can address the human rights violation, especially in their own country?
Maybe we should break down the human rights first,
Okay.
because human rights consists of civil, political rights, and economic, social, cultural rights. Some
Mm,
countries may feel more comfortable on economic, social, cultural rights. So, for instance, the level of some issues in relation to health, poverty may reduce, and that's already an implementation to the respect of economic, social, cultural rights. Some
mm,
countries focus more on civil political rights. So far, I think we have not been seen in a comprehensive way when we talk about human rights. It's very often human rights only discussed within the civil political rights only, not necessarily economic, social, cultural rights. So if we can break down which rights that violated the most in the countries, then we can
mm.
focus more on that rather than looking at human rights in general.
Do you think that the non-interference principle of ASEAN become a serious obstacle in enhancing human rights in the region?
Before, yes. Before, whenever we talk about human rights at the level before ICHR was established, it was
Ah,
the norm has been one of the stumbling block whenever a member state would like to pick up the issue on human rights. But now the ICHR was established since 2009. Whether or not the non-interference has been the hindrance to talk about it. So when I joined iChair in 2019, we continue to receive responses such as talking about human rights issues of other countries means that we violating our FAIRY norms, which is the non-interference principle, and also violating our value of being family. But
mm,
then after a while, some member state evolve by itself, and now we can talk about human rights issues in ICHR. We have institutionalized agenda. We call it the recent development in ASEAN, in which each representative of each member states of
mm,
ASEAN can talk about human rights issues in ICHR meeting. So tomorrow we are going to address human rights issues in the region, to talk about it, to recognize there is a problem in the region on number of front. So when we have this institutionalized agenda, no countries member of ASEAN accuse us of violating the norms. So what we've learned so far, there are at least three factors need to be there, so we can live with and along with non-interference principle. First is the commitment of member state to talk about it. Second, modalities. We need to agree among member state on how to do this, how to discuss the issue. And then the third, there should be a platform, which is the agenda itself. So once we fulfill these three elements, so actually we can talk about human rights within our limitation that created by the norms, the non-interference principle itself. Another platform that we created so far is ASEAN Human Rights Dialogue that we are going to organize on the 19th of November. So this ASEAN Human Rights Dialogue is also a platform for ASEAN member states, like in the UPR, Universal Periodic Review. They can talk about human rights situation in their own term, how they define human rights violation, and how they want to address the problem. And then we talk about it without being accused of interfering. Because during the ASEAN Human Rights Dialogue or during the agenda on recent development of in ASEAN, we question other countries. Why don't you do this? Why this continue happen in the country? What's wrong? What we can do about it? So we asking this question is no longer sensitive. It is remain sensitive, but since we are working within our modalities, we did not we did not go beyond the modalities that we created, agreed upon 10 countries, then we can talk about it. So what we've learned so far, the non-interference principle can be there, can continue to be there, but it should not dictate us on how we can move forward with human rights.
But are you really optimistic with all platforms that you mentioned before? As you know, for a long time, we still see the human rights violations in Myanmar until now. The Rohingya is still abroad in Syria, in Bangladesh, and in other countries, of course, including Indonesia. And it's also when in President Duterte's period that he also didn't stop the harsh punishment or the harsh action to the people at the time. So it's a lot of things that happen. So disappearances is also still happen. So what do you think about that? So how you or everyone will make that it's not stop in the table, but it's really work in the field?
I have to be optimistic as a person inside the system. All energy should go for the victims. So we have to find ways and system to allow us to talk about it, to discuss about it. Of course, having these all platforms do not solve the problem. There is no way only talking about it and then we solve the problem. But while when we talk about it, it means that we recognize the problem and then we can open more doors. Like for instance, in the UN, we have Human Rights Council. We continue to talk about human rights all the time, but human rights violation continue to happen. So it is not that we come up with these platforms that we can solve the problem. No, but we can create some of the solution during the discussion. So for instance, perhaps after acknowledging the problem, the issue, and how we concern about the people inside the country, for instance, in Myanmar or other countries, so we can find some ways in which we can do, providing funding, providing support, technical assistance, anything that we can help victims suffering from human rights violation. So I think this is only small little thing that we can do. There are so many ways that we should do in addressing human rights violation, but I have to be optimistic as someone working inside the system, because our focus should be how to reduce the suffering of the victims.
The commission, the AICHR, I don't know how you call it, HR, has
I
been
think
criticized. Yeah, has been criticized for not being effective and capable of addressing the human rights abuses in the regions. Uh, do you agree with that, or can you explain about actually what's the challenge or obstacles that you have to face?
I was one of the group that criticized ICHR before, because I was part of civil society who do the advocacy to have the independent and credible human rights mechanism in ASEAN. Now I'm inside the system. Then I should be able to bring the ideas from the victims into the system in different ways. Of course, we cannot fulfill all the wishes of the victims, but we have to do it gradually. A lot of challenges that we face. For instance, now each country has a different ideas about human rights, and human rights continue to be seen as security issues rather than human rights issues. So when government feel uncomfortable dealing with human rights with this frame, it's make us difficult to move forward. But again, nothing impossible. We should be able to talk about it, and that is why platforms, dialogue platforms, need to be established to create opportunity for to exchange views, to share best practices, to improve capacity, and also capacity building for officials, for instance, and changing the attitude and perspective. And these need a lot of works and processes. There is no such a thing that human rights violation can be solved in one night or 1 month or 1 year. It requires process, and I believe in process. And process make the situation, peace situation, rather sustainable, rather than having something immediately happen or instant.
You mentioned about sharing the best practices among members, right? And can you mention any countries that have a best practices of human rights protection?
Some countries have national human institutions, like for instance Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, and Myanmar. So these mechanism of protection at the national level, stories can be shared among member states. A number of programs such as achieving SDGs. Each country has a different ways of achieving SDGs, from reducing stunting or providing uh, water and sanitation, clear water and sanitation, and so many things. So we have a number of approaches that we have shared. For instance,
Mhm.
Indonesia organized a workshop in relation to the prevention of torture. Indonesia has a coalition consists of stakeholders from government and non-government organizations, as well as national human institutions. So they perform the work on how to prevent torture in different institutions, and these kind of experiences can be learned by others. Thailand have a community a project on prevention of torture, raising awareness about that torture is crime among people there, so they will be able to demand their rights whenever they will be in the police or uh, um, police offices on or in any institution, so they can say that this is crime and this is not allowed according to international human rights law, for instance. So
Mhm.
different countries having a different approaches. Last time we also had a workshop on remedy, where Indonesia share how Indonesia's effort to provide remedies, both non-judicial and judicial approach, and also Cambodia with the Khmer Rouge Tribunal and number of activities following the Khmer Rouge Tribunal. And Philippines also come up with the Commission on Transitional Justice. So these are some of the experiences that each country can learn. It is up to the member state which kind of type of best practices they want to learn from others, but providing a platform for member state to be able to share their experiences is very important.
So it's like each countries they have many phases. Sometimes in one side probably they have like a back practice of the human rights protection, but the other sides sometimes they do the violation of human rights. So, yeah,
Selamat datang di Politeknik Tempo, kampus vokasi yang siap menjadi lahan penyemayan ide dan gagasan baru untuk menjawab tantangan di era 4.0. Fasilitas belajar ditunjang sistem Smart Campus dengan pembelajaran serba digital, membuat perkuliahan lebih mudah dan menyenangkan. Kampus terintegrasi dengan industri media dan komunitas startup sehingga mahasiswa langsung berinteraksi dengan dunia kerja dan dunia usaha sejak dini. 3 program studi unggulan Politeknik Tempo: Desain Media, Produksi Media, Manajemen Pemasaran Internasional. Sistem blended learning dan kampus merdeka dengan materi belajar 60% praktik menjadikan lulusan Politeknik Tempo sebagai sarjana terapan siap kerja. Sebagai penyelenggara pendidikan, Tempo Media Group berpengalaman selama 50 tahun di industri media dengan reputasi tinggi. Mari raih masa depan gemilang bersama Politeknik Tempo.
The Commission's mandate is considered weak, and there is no monitoring and complaint mechanism that people can approach the Commission when they feel in their efforts to seek justice in their own countries. Is it? Do you think it's true about it?
Well, in its term of reference, IHR has no mandate to receive complaints, but thanks to civil society and victims who continue to knock the door of IHR, now we have the complaint mechanism. It is still not ideal complaint mechanism, but IHR now has consensus to receive complaints from civil society or from victims. It can be sent to IHR at ASEAN ORG. Each individual member state or each individual representative will be able to respond. It was agreed in November 2019. So far, from November 2019 until now, I have received 2 or 3 cases that I have followed up by
From where?
From Indonesia. So each because the system is that victims or civil society can send complaints to IHR at ASEAN ORG. It will be received by ASEAN Secretariat, and ASEAN Secretariat will table it in the IHR meeting, and then the representative will respond to that. So
okay, so not directly to the Commission.
Well, that is ASEAN Secretariat or working for the Commission. So it's actually directly to the Commission. So each country receives some of the cases, but for Indonesia, I received 2. One is on the harassment against human rights defenders working on corruption, anti-corruption, and the other one is on local laws that criminalize LGBT. So for that particular issues, I need to check first to Komnas HAM, to the National Human Rights Commission, whether the cases are in their table. If yes, then I should withdraw from the process, but can monitor to avoid overlapping until at certain point. But we continue to monitor to what extent the cases have been taken care by the institutions.
So, what about other countries? They also got a lot of reports, or
yes. Thailand also received complaints from civil society. we actually did not see the number of complaints per country as bad thing, because it is a process of strengthening this complaint mechanism. We need more and more complaints from civil society and victims for us to be able to test the system, to make it more effective, and to learn from it. So far, we only receive less than 10 from November 2019 until now. We received less than 10 complaints. So I would like to invite more and more people to send us a complaint for us to be able to address that and to test the system. Very often, some cases are at the hand of national system, but we can, individual member of ICHR can take some initiatives. So for instance, we can write a letter to the concerned government, just say that we received these cases, and we would like to know, or we would like to monitor the process of solving the problem. Only so sometimes writing a letter is also is strong enough to show the government that we pay attention to this case. So or this case draw our attention to this. So there are many ways that ICHR representative can do. It require creativity and of course initiative to be able to do that. I often consult with the victims what they expect us to do. Very often I receive complaints. During COVID-19, I receive online. I actually I conducted a public hearing online. Some people come forward with this closed public hearing. And then I always ask to the victim how they want me to do. Because without their consent, I cannot go beyond what victims want. Sometimes they do not know what I should do. Maybe they need time, but it is very important to be heard by officials on what happened to them during COVID-19 or not also during COVID-19. I refer to the case that these young women, not from Indonesia, from one country, is member of ASEAN, got the online bullying, and it really broke her. She refused to go to school. She refused to mingle with others, even the family. So she stay in the house.
So, what about the result of the investigation? That you make a recommendation to the states that involved in the violation of human rights, or what happened?
First, there was no investigation yet. Within this complaint mechanism, we follow up. The follow-up action can be checking to national human institution or consulting with victims on what they want us to do and many other things, but not yet to investigation, because when we arrive at a decision to investigate, first we do not have the mandate to do investigation. But if we agree on doing the investigation, we need to talk about that in ICHR meeting. At the moment, the approach was not discussing one issue in ICHR meeting, but rather receiving complaint and then respond, then going back to ICHR on what I have done in terms of addressing the issue. So far, what issues submitted to ICHR from Indonesia, these are done or under the under not under the table. They are on the table of the National Human Rights Commission or Komnas HAM. So we are at that level. So we have not been able to follow up the cases into further action such as investigation or coming up with recommendations yet.
Okay. Next year, the Indonesia has become the chair of ASEAN, right? And what do you think? What's the priorities of the HR that you should take?
Mm. Um, the main agenda of Indonesia in ICHR from the beginning, from the establishment of ICHR in 2009, was to strengthen the mechanism. Because all we know, and you mentioned already, that ICHR has been criticized of not having enough protection mandates. So Indonesia's agenda from the beginning is to strengthen the body to be able to develop its own protection mechanism. So that's the first and the main agenda. We have been done that from 2009, and we will continue to do that in 2023. And it is in line with the motto or the priority of Indonesia. I think um, the what is this what to call it? They put this agenda as ASEAN Matters, the epicentrum of growth. So the way we see growth is not only in economic, but also how human rights mechanism can develop, can evolve into a body that victims want, into the body that civil society wants, into the body that people in ASEAN want ICHR to do. And we have done in the last 13 years, and we should be able to harvest some of the work we have done earlier. I mentioned about complaint mechanism. It is not yet in the term of reference. We hope to have that included in the term of reference of ICHR in the process of review. So no matter who will be sitting in the ICHR, the representative will be able to carry and continue this kind of complaint mechanism. Similarly, with the dialogue opportunity, as well as a number of initiatives organized by individual ICHR representative. I mentioned earlier that I organize number of public hearing. As ICHR, I do not have the mandate to do public hearing, but as ICHR Indonesia, I can do that. And I've been organizing public hearing with the help of civil society to bring victims come forward to see me, and then I listen to their stories. I have a regular discussion or public hearing with Rohingyas in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, where they can share their concerns to me, and then I some issues that they want me to do and follow up. I can do follow up to some respective governments, and then the next meeting I inform them I've done this, I have not done this. So it's more accountability mechanism for them. So now we have three public hearing already with Rohingyas, and I hope to have more and more to be able to make ICHR down to earth, to make ICHR more relevant to the life of the people in the region.
Okay. So it's Myanmar. It's also becoming priority for the HR, for the commission, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
do you think the Asian or we can build a region that advance human rights and democracy? I mean, it's like if we see there's still a lot of problems on the issue.
As we see the experiences around the world in terms of democracy and human rights, it's always up and down. We've seen in the region the country that has been a champion of human rights and democracy, and then can uh, went backward in terms of human rights and democracy achievement. So perhaps what we should do is to provide some of the parameters, some of the safeguard, how not to go back, how not to return to to the time that we were before, but rather move forward with human rights and democracy. Perhaps we need to have a strong institution, but more importantly, we need to have democracy and human rights education very often, because as we've seen in number of countries in the region, history change or perceived as differently from time to time. Those who think that Marcos was the violator of human rights, now Marcos is a hero. And it is not only Philippines. In number of countries, we see this often. So people call it as historical revisiting. So
Mm.
perhaps we need to. I believe there is no single formula, but I think human rights education, democratic education is very very important, and generation continue to change. The current generation perhaps perceive democracy in different way, which is not wrong. It is correct, but we should be able to be flexible, because our aim should be that democracy should be sustainable and deliver to the people. Many
Mm.
people, many young people think that human rights does not deliver, democracy does not deliver. So we need to find ways why we are in our stage now.
Okay.
And of course, there is no one formula fits all.
Ibu Yuyun, thank you for the insightful conversation. Sadly, we have to end today's program. Once again, it's an honor to have you here, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you for the time.
Viewers, thank you for watching us. I'm Purwanidia Prabandari. You can watch the next Temple Talks in the following months with another interesting topics and another prominent guest. Good day.